Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another Employee Resource Group session, ERG resource session. I started this session a couple of years ago, and a lot of times I get to think about, the word ERG in front of this because people call it so many different names now. But I'm a management consultant focused specifically on organizations building communities within their workplace, and those communities can look different depending on the organization. It could be councils, it could be action groups, it could be ERGs, BRGs, whatever they are, helping companies bring their employees together across different functions around the business goals and supporting employees and people along the way. So thank you for joining me today, Nicole, and welcome.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
All right. So today, I wanted to focus our conversation on retention, on metrics, and I'm glad to have Nicole to share a little bit about the SpartanNash case study with us. A lot of times, talking and teaching about things, but I love to bring guests who have walked this journey that could really share practical examples of how we walked these, how we did this, and I've read a lot about the work that you have been doing over the last 2 years and the organization as a whole. And I think very, very appropriate for that topic, very appropriate for this time of the year as companies think about the next year and the people first approach. So first, I'd like to get to know you a little bit more, Nicole. Can you introduce yourself and tell us your current role and then how you got here, some of your career history?
Yeah, so my name is Nicole Zube. I am the Chief HR Officer for SpartanNash. SpartanNash is a food solutions company. We are a retailer and we are a wholesaler. We have 147, soon to be almost 200 of our own retail stores, mostly based in the Midwest states of the United States. And we also are an independent wholesaler to about 2,300 independent grocery chains as well. One of the organizations that we support is the U.S. military. So how food gets in the commissaries and exchanges around the world for our men and women and our troops is through SpartanNash. So that's a really special piece of what we do. And we have a little over 17,500 associates. We announced an acquisition, so we're going to be almost up to 20,000 associates. So it's a very unique business in which we have people that are frontline associates in grocery stores, in distribution centers, truck drivers, and then we also have kind of a corporate environment. So that makes it pretty unique in the things that we do. I have had the extreme pleasure to be the lead for HR here at the company for the last 2 years. And we've been going through a really huge transformation at our company in terms of really trying to set ourselves up for growth. And so it's been a really great experience. Before I joined SpartanNash, my career, I was with 2 consumer goods companies. The first was with a company called Procter & Gamble, which is a very large company, consumer goods company based out of Cincinnati, Ohio. I was there for about 8.5 years. I started my career in HR. I've been in HR the entire time. I tell people I ended up in HR because I was an athlete my whole life. I played volleyball very competitively and in college. And I learned a lot about being a great teammate, creating really great teams, and how people are really important to driving the business. And so that's just where I fell and fell in love with human resources. After 8.5 years at Procter & Gamble, getting a lot of really great assignments, one of them being in Boston, Massachusetts, and moving from a Midwest culture into an East Coast culture. I learned a lot about that. I made a great move and moved to Kellogg in 2012. And I had a really great career at Kellogg for about 10 years. I had a lot of different progressive HR roles. One of the pinnacle roles that I had at Kellogg was when I actually lived in the UK. So I lived in the UK with my family from 2019 until 2022. And it was really an incredible experience for me to see the world as an American in a different lens. It was the first time in my life that I'll be honest that I felt really different, where people were judging me based upon my accent or what they assumed other Americans were like. and having to learn how to navigate many different cultures. And I had the great pleasure of starting up some of our diversity, equity, inclusion work over in Europe as an American. And that really shaped my passion for making
Yeah.
people feel that they can be who they are and really be their authentic self. And so this really spiraled into something I'm really passionate about, which is this idea of inclusion, of people feeling that they belong, and really just my curiosity and understanding different cultures. And so I've just been super blessed in my career journey of the people I've gotten to work with, the places I've been able to be, and just the opportunity that's in front of me. And like today being with you. So thank you so much for this
Yeah.
opportunity.
Thank you. And thank you for that, walk through your journey, because I think it's really important. Sometimes we tend to define people based on a title.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times you do need to listen to people's story, walk through their journey. And we talked about inclusion through so many lenses. And I've actually told people the same thing. I'm an immigrant. I was born and raised in Nigeria. And
Mm-hmm.
so I do a lot of work and research around people's experiences
Mm-hmm.
as, transplant employee, or whatever word people use. When you change locations for a short period of time, a long period of time. So I tell people that, try living in a different country from where you were born, or a different space, or a different industry, something where you get to see things through a new lens. It changes you. And thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So human resources at SpartanNash, people-centered strategy. I want to dive a little bit into your strategy at your organization. And it's thank you for sharing that context of how your company is structured, sort of the different layers. I think some of the conversations and the challenges I've seen with companies are mostly, the retail, the manufacturing,
Yeah.
those on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
How did you talk about your people first strategy, and how you've incorporated that into your multiple lined and work structure within the organization?
Yeah, so for us, we call our culture a people first culture. And when I was interviewing for this job with the CEO, I thought, wow, that's really bold to say that. You must hear a lot, that's not people first. This isn't people first, and people don't get their way. And
Right.
at 2 years in, I will say, do I hear that sometimes? Yes. Do I hear it often? No. And the reason that I don't hear it that often is because it's not about what you say, it's about what you do. Your actions need to really match the culture that you're trying to create and the environment that you're trying to create. And for us, it's about what's best for the greater good of our organization, not what's best for certain specific individuals. And so we try to really take that into account. Another thing that's really special about the organization is just that we're servant leaders. I mean, when I look at our almost 20,000 employees, 75% of them are frontline associates. So we're only here to support those frontline associates that are going into work every single day, that are working directly with customers and shoppers and delivering our products different places. And without them, we wouldn't have a business. So I think that's a really important part of the mindset in which we operate here, in terms of making sure we really feel that servant leadership attributes in what we do every single day. About 4 years ago, we created what we call our winning recipe, and it really talks about the values within our company, our mission that we're trying to achieve, and how we want people to behave. And we really put that into everything we do every single day, from the first day that you start to how we recognize people through our communications channels, to how we develop people in our recruitment process, to how we reward people, to our performance cycle. Like, it's really embedded into every single associate touch point. So it's not going back to the action. It's not just the words, at what you actually experience, how you get coached, how we develop leaders. It's really embedded into everything that we do.
Yeah. And I love the way you kind of set that up. Is 75% of your employees are frontline workers. So
Yeah.
it's a perspective shift in the way you think about the work that you do, right? We are here to support everyone doing their work every single day. Because part of the experience and challenge that I've seen with companies that have a switch in that number is thinking of frontline workers, or people on the floor, or people in the stores, as more of an afterthought. right? It's almost like we're the ones doing the work, and oh yeah, we gotta, include these guys in the programming. Is looking at the entire organization. What are we trying to accomplish? Who are we trying to serve? What are our products? And then what are the roles that we have as, it's not the corporate taking charge of things, is leading and supporting the people that are doing work every single day.
Yeah, and that's also why like we invest quite a bit in making sure we have really great leaders here. And of course, we have pockets like every organization, we're not perfect. But your experience in any organization is typically through the lens of the leader that you work for.
Yeah.
And so the better that we can make our leaders more inclusive, more in tune culturally, more understanding and empathetic, more accountability and planning what they're going to do, the better experience our associates are going to have. And there's also other big things that we've done that have made a difference. One of the things that was really important is just being safe at work, especially when you think about frontline associates. They're doing some dangerous and very repetitive tasks. And unfortunately, we had associates that were not going home in the way they showed up at our organization. And how can you say you're people first if you're not actually making sure people are safe? And when you say safe, there's that physical safety, but there's also that emotional safety. There's also the psychological safety that you need to have as a leader to truly create an environment in which people belong. And so those are the types of conversations that we're having. And last year, we rolled out some competencies through Korn Ferry to really help drive our performance. And we started to talk about, what are those competencies that really are going to make the biggest difference here at SpartanNash. And one of our 4 competencies that we have for all associates in our company is values differences. So in order for us to drive performance, we need to value the differences that everyone brings to our organization, value the differences of our customers and our shoppers to drive our profits and our innovation and our growth. And we're embedding that in what we do every single day. And so that's just a couple examples of how we're not only just talking about it, but we're actually turning it into action. So that becomes the difference maker for us here.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, especially safety. Safety is, multiple layers of safety, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not just physical, the emotional well-being and resources support. So I work a lot with companies that have ERGs, and part of the journey that I've been on over the last couple of years is initially when I started, it was with companies that already had ERGs, right? And then I started to have this experience with companies that don't have ERGs, and where HR is really at the core of things. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that at your organization. Do you have resource groups, and how have they been a part of these strategy over the last 4 years?
Yeah, so I joined the company just over 2 years ago. And just at that point, we had announced a senior director of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. So we just put a lead role in place here in an over 100-old company. And I came from another company thinking, how is there a company out there in the world where this doesn't exist? But it's true. Yep. I joined one of them that were just starting it up. But that excited me because the opportunities were so immense. And so what we decided at the time is that we wanted to just stay really focused on really 4 areas. So we have, first of all, we call them ERGs. We call all of our employees associates here. So we call them associate resource groups.
Okay.
We have one that is called SN Vets, that's focused on veterans. We have another one called RISE for relationships, innovation, success, and engagement. It's our young professionals network. We have another one called WIN, Women's Impact Network, which is around our women's network. And then we have another one called TIDE, Total Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity, that is focused around Black and Indigenous people of color, BIPOC organization. And so we have 4 ERGs that we focus on. The way that we've organized ourselves is that we have co-chairs that are from the business that are really passionate about this space. We have executive leadership team members, so my peers that support and champion those. So 4 of my executives are part of that. And this is all very supportive by our executive leadership team in terms of really championing what we do every single day as part of our ERGs. We have themes that we do every single month, and our ERGs help with that so that we can bring those to life in our different facilities. And we do a lot to volunteer and serve in our network as well. So associates at any level can participate in our ARGs. And we also think about it as a way to gain broader leadership experience. So say maybe you're not a people leader today, you're able to go in and be part of a cross-functional group about an area that you're passionate about, and you're able to lead something. And it's something that we pull into our talent management process. And we actually put that into your goals. So if you are on an associate resource group, we view that as one of your key deliverables for the year, is to contribute to that group and contribute to the culture that group is trying to do within our organization. So it's really great.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. And that's why, I sort of structured this conversation this way too, because I want people to realize ERGs are powerful, but it starts way beyond establishing the groups, right? What work are you doing? What decisions are being made at the organization and the executive leadership level, right? And then how are you embedding these groups into everything that the business is working through, and the development piece as well for these leaders. So who is stepping into these roles? What are they walking away with? Right at the end of this term, is that incorporated into their career development at the organization and not seen as a side, a distracting time of their day, of their volunteer day.
Yes, I was really excited. So every year we have an annual leadership summit that we do, and we hand out awards as part of it. And after our first year, our ARG co-chairs won an award for their contribution to our culture. So I knew we were on the right track, even 1 year in, when I knew it wasn't being viewed as incremental work, it was being viewed as the work to help drive our people first culture. And so then as we were going into our second year and we're getting things up and running really well, we started to get ourselves organized a little bit more around like, how do we want to structure ourselves? Like we learned a lot in the first year. Like what I would say to people too, if you're starting stuff up, it's not going to be perfect the first time around, and what may work for one ARG may not work for the other, because you may have different styles and different priorities and different pockets of the business that are in that group. And so just also acknowledging the diversity of the ARGs that you have and the needs of that are important. But we did try to create some structure in terms of our priorities for those groups. So we kind of call it the 5 C's, or the five pillars that we focus on around culture, career, commerce, communication, and community. And a lot of what we do is just try to create communities inside the company and outside the company as well. And so by organizing ourselves in that way, it allowed us from an HR perspective, so I have a team of people that help manage these ARGs, to have a consistent way that we're coaching them. And then as they come up with ideas, we can bucket them together in a way that we can help move it forward, so that there's not one ARG working on something and another ARG and it's the same thing. We can do something, together or collectively. Or if there's 2 ARGs that really feel passionate about something, they can partner up on that and move an agenda forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And the journey is important as well, because sometimes I have people asking questions around, company size. Employee resource group for large size companies, or are they for smaller companies? And I always say you don't start from the size of the company. I mean, there are companies with large sizes and maybe they don't have ERGs. There are companies leveraging the ERGs, but it's how you partner these groups together. You can be early on your ARG journey and maybe more far along on your culture journey overall. So how have you seen that? So seeing that your ARGs are pretty early on, how have you seen the support they've been able to give to your people first strategy and the work that you're doing on that large lens?
I mean, they've done a huge impact to our strategy overall. The way that I know that they're making a difference is, I've looked at some of our feedback that we've gotten in our culture surveys. We also have had some external surveys that have been done, and people feeling that they have a sense of belonging and that they could be their authentic self actually comes up at the top of what we get every single survey response that we get back. So they are making an impact as part of that. A big piece of where our ARGs are helping us are in 2 places. I think attracting folks into our company, they're very passionate about helping people understand what SpartanNash does, and the fact that they could be part of these ARGs and part of a community in which they may have interest in being a part of. It also have helped really, really closely with retention. So it has helped us create another layer and infrastructure to say, you know, we're a great organization in which you can stay, in which there are people who are like you, in which there are people who feel passionate about different topics in which you can engage broader than just your core role. And that's helped us improve our retention. So we focus quite heavily on our first 90-day retention in our company, just as a frontline organization. That's pretty common. We have found that if I can get somebody to stay here for 90 days, they are 4 times more likely to make it to 1 year. And our turnover after 1 year is 4%. So if I can just get somebody to have a really incredible experience in those first 90 days, they will likely stay with our organization. And so our ARGs engage in that from before we recruit people and then through the onboarding process and then beyond that as well. So in the last 2 years, we have had over 20% turnover improvement. This year alone, we are on track to have over 10% turnover improvement versus the previous year, which is pretty huge in our organization. And our ARGs have been part of supporting that.
Yeah. Okay, so we're moving into metrics. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions before we move into metrics, because metrics, numbers, very important. But I want to hear a little bit more about the strategies you have in place around attraction and then that onboarding as well as overall retention. So attraction, is there any changes or any strategies that you have employed over the last 3-4 years, right, around attracting? I mean, are you is in terms of going out to career fairs or something like that, right? How are you leveraging these groups or just your culture overall to attract the right candidate?
Yeah, so our sourcing plan is a really large piece of that. And we actually engaged Dr. Sandra Upton to come help us. So she's very well known in the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging space. And we needed some help putting together a strategy a little bit. And we found that we actually had a gap in our sourcing strategy. So we weren't going to as many diverse sources as we should to attract candidates in. And so we were able to start to go and look at where are all locations, where do we hire the most, where would diverse populations be, and how can we start making our jobs more relevant and more available to those sorts of populations. So that's a large piece of work, where it's just how do we even post our jobs to make sure that they're getting out to diverse applicants. Right. That's been a large piece of it. We also have a really great internship program here. So by the end of 2025, we will have had over 300 interns with us. Right. But last year alone, we had 106 interns from 40 universities, with 61% of those who came from diverse backgrounds. So we want to make sure that we're also bringing in people into our entry-level roles that can grow and have a really great career here. So we focused pretty heavily on our internship program, having strong numbers, converting them, and making sure they have a really great experience.
Yeah, I love that. Right. I mean, there's multiple layers, and that's why I wanted you to talk a little bit more about that, because there's multiple layers and it is a journey, right? So early recruitment, embedding, giving as much people experiences, and revising the sourcing plan, the sourcing strategy, right? So are your ARGs involved, or are you thinking about involving them in any way with recruitment attraction, right? Attraction process?
Yeah, we have campus teams that go on campus, and many of them do that. They also partner with other organizations. So for example, we have veterans organizations that we work with that try to help us identify veterans that are coming out of service that are looking for opportunities, and how can we take those transferable skills and find opportunities for them? Or are there people that are coming out of the service that want to go back to a certain location where we may have a distribution center? So yeah, our ARGs work. For example, our veterans group does a really nice job as part of that. Some of our early in career programs are run by our ARGs. So we have a really cool program called I Grow. And a lot of our ARG leads come and talk about their career stories, the functions that they're in, and build capability in our organization. So like I was telling you before about how we view ARGs as a catapulter to a leadership experience, we try to find real ways that people can contribute back beyond just being part of the ARG.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. All right. So you shared a little bit about some of those numbers. So numbers, metrics, measurement, it's one that gets really tricky when you're talking about people first, right? When you're talking about companies wanting to see the numbers and just it takes a while to see these results in the numbers, the level that leadership really wants to see. But that's why it's important that you have people from leadership level engaged,
Yes.
because it takes them understanding that there are some numbers that are eating numbers. And while you might want to track month to month, day to day numbers, there's some journeys that you have to be on for a while. But you have seen some numbers, you have seen some change. So first, talk about how did you determine what to measure? What are you measuring? And what are some of the changes in terms of metrics that you have started seeing?
Yeah. So, for us, we really look at that 90-day new hire retention metric that I kind of talked with you about. And we have about 65% retention within the first 90 days, which is about a 10% gain versus where we had been in previous years. So that's been
Mhm.
huge for us, attracting and keeping people in our organization. The other thing that we looked at is just the number of associates that are in our ARGs overall, just understanding
Right.
like what percent of our population are part of that. And now we're starting to break it down. And this is where we kind of been talking about the journey, where it's not just what's the whole number now, but it's like, where are the segments of business? Where do we have people that are part of it or maybe not? Why do we think that
Yeah.
is? Is there a communication gap? Is there an opportunity gap? Are their needs different to participate? What does that look like?
Mhm.
We look at our overall diversity representation metrics across the organization, our people leader and above level, and obviously across the total company as well. So those are some of the ways that we look at that. We just created a brand new HR dashboard that will come out next year, and diversity plays a key part in us understanding the diversity mix of our associates and how are we trending from a attraction retention standpoint. We're also embedding things in each step of our talent acquisition process, from what are the number of applicants we get to how does that flow actually look to making that higher, and are there opportunities for us to make sure that we are being equitable across the entire process as well. So data tells a lot, and then you
Yes.
can start to really dig in a lot to the processes and other inputs that go into certain scenarios to really find out,
Yeah.
even if you think you're doing great, where could you be even better.
What could you be doing better? Yeah, and I love how you talked about the numbers as a whole, and then also beginning to break it down. For example, talking about membership of the ARGs. That's great, but how is it spread out?
Yep.
Right? How is it spread out across functions? How can we tie that into? Because another thing that I see is people lumping the membership count and using that to define a win, right? Like we got all these numbers. That's great. How does that relate to the um, company population? Which again, you're not trying to necessarily say we want 100% of our employees to be members of the ARG, right? For tracking that baseline, and then where do you want to go to? I think the breakdown is more important than actually the overall percentage. Because people are always going to, flow in and out of engaging with the ARGs.
Yep.
But how is it spread out, and how is it impacting the key things that we want within those divisions and business units?
Yeah, the other thing I'd add that I didn't say yet was just that we also look at the engagement of those that are involved in ARGs and understanding, are they staying longer, or is their engagement higher? What does that look like? And there is a positive correlation here to say that people who are part of ARGs are typically more engaged into what they're doing at work, which makes them more engaged in the work that we have them do as part of their everyday work. And they feel that they can stay here. They feel that they can
Mhm.
belong. And so being able to quantify that is also a really great way from a
Yeah.
business impact standpoint.
Yeah. Another question I wanted to ask about sort of the ARG people first culture is the HR DEI segregation. And I think, I've seen a lot of organizations where there are questions on hesitation on, it's HR led. I'll say, 6, 7 years ago, ERGs will be driven from the bottoms up, right? Mostly, right? Like convincing the organizations to make us formal, almost like we gotta do the work, put in the numbers so that the company will recognize us. But I've seen a lot more of companies starting with that, embedding it into the plan, into the strategy, so that they support the ARGs being established uh, appropriately. So you did mention that you have inclusion diversity team, and then you have your HR team supporting and using these numbers. How do you work together to make sure that HR is supportive, but people are still feeling like this is my group and I have a voice within this group?
Yeah, so part of it is the structure of how we've set up my organization. And so the lead for DEIB reports into me and it sits on the HR leadership team. So it's not an afterthought. That person is in every single conversation that we're having about the organization, and it's viewed as an equal priority to any other priority. So it's not really an afterthought. It's the work, it's the strategy, and it's for everyone. So that was intentional on my part and on our part to make sure it isn't buried, and it really is continued to stay as a focus and a priority area. I think the person that you have leading your DEIB work is incredibly important. And I feel lucky here that we have someone that had actually been with our organization for 35 years, over 35 years now, and is very passionate about it. So she understood the cultural dynamics of the organization. She could be somebody that people could come talk to, but not necessarily was viewed as, she is in the HR function, but wasn't viewed as like an HR person. She was viewed as just a normal associate that was passionate about something that wanted to make a difference. And so I think you need to have somebody leading the work that isn't checking boxes, that genuinely wants to improve the culture and make a difference. And it helps to not create segregation between HR work and DEIB work. It's all the same. And also having somebody in your team that can translate the needs of the ARGs to where we have gaps in our processes, procedures, leadership, et cetera, and say, here are some tangible examples that I've heard and seen from the ARGs that we might want to tighten up and get better on. And us being open, everybody being open to understanding, yep, that's actually right. I can see why that point of view exists. How could we make that different and have that be part of our work and our continuous improvement mindset? Yeah. So that's just a little bit around how I lead our team and how I expect people to work together. But I do think that the lead of who people interface within your ARGs is very critical to that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. All right. So sort of wrapping up now. Again, this is a journey, the culture journey, the inclusion journey, the belonging journey. And so we're at a crucial time of the year. We're wrapping up a year, starting a new calendar year. What are some of the things you've learned and that you are incorporating into your 2025 plan? Essentially, what's in view for SpartanNash in 2025 based on some of the learnings over the last year?
Yes, yeah. So from a human resources perspective, we have something pretty exciting. So we actually announced a larger acquisition that we're doing with a company called Fresh Encounter. They have 49 retail stores in Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky. So we finally actually getting some presence in the state of Kentucky. So a big priority for us will be integrating that business into SpartanNash. So that's going to be a large focus area. And that'll move us from 17,000 associates to almost 20,000 associates here. So getting them into our people first culture, understanding their culture, processes, all of that, that's going to be a big priority. Overall, we're going to continue to double down on engagement and retention of our organization. I think that work never stops. We're also going to continue to focus on our people first and what we say high performance culture. It's good to, we need to make sure that we continue to have really high performance here so that we can grow, which is why my third priority is all around transformation. How can we transform our organization? How can we start to look at the future of work and where we're going and use data and use insights to be able to do that in a much better way? And then finally, for me, I still have responsibility for safety in the organization. And so continuing our really great safety journey will be an area of focus for my team partnering directly with the business. So those are just a few things that I know we are working on in 24 that'll carry on or accelerate even more in 25.
All right. Thank you so much, Nicole. I appreciate you coming to share with us. And again, if you're listening, that's the reason why I invited Nicole to talk about this is because these are topics, these are questions that people have a challenge around is retention, right? And also incorporating HR with DEIB goals. right?
Yeah.
However we phrase them at the organization, as well as handling all of these in an industry, an organization that has lots more frontline workers or retail workers. So I think your context, your experience has been really helpful. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to drop in the chat or connect with Nicole directly or myself. And I look forward to continuing to follow along and see how you're doing and your groups are doing, Nicole. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was great. Really appreciate it.
All right. Bye, everyone.